It's always sobering, I think, to realize how little time it takes to read a few pages and how long it took to translate. Those of us who've done that, we know it's an arduous, laborious work. I like this illustration here. It reminds me of the translator's role, opening a pathway to the unknown. I think that's a nice metaphor for what we're doing here tonight, more or less. Our second reader tonight is Philip Boehm, a translator, playwright, and theater director, whose career zigzags across languages and borders, artistic disciplines, and cultural divides. He is the author of more than 30 translations of prose works and plays by German and Polish writers, including Herta Müller, Franz Kafka, and Hannah Krall. He has received many awards from the American Translators Association, the UK Society of Authors, the National Endowment of the Arts, the Austrian Ministry of Culture, and the Texas Institute of Letters. This evening he's going to read to us from his translation of Hannah Krall's Chasing the King of Hearts, which has just won the 2018 PEN America Literary Award for Translation. That's all for Philip. Another prestigious feather in your cap. But when discussing this translation, and I'm always interested, I think we all are, in hearing what a translator has done, how they've approached their particular project, the challenges and how they've worked around this. It's always interesting to hear what the translator has to say. And in this case, Philip explained that the book is very fast-paced, and the prose is economical to the point of being laconic. He also talked about the importance of maintaining the style and rhythm of the Polish original. This is what he actually said. Rhythm does have meaning. Establishing the pace came with finding the voice. The laconic style of the original is reinforced by the language itself. Polish does not use articles, and often the subject of a sentence can be inferred from the context or implied from the grammar. I did make a conscious effort to streamline the English, but only after first attempting to capture the full meaning of the Polish sentences. Consequently, the English is differently laconic than the Polish. Now here's what the London newspaper The Guardian had to say about this novel. We are sucked in by the devastating charm of Krall's art. Chasing the King of Hearts is not only a love story and a Holocaust novel. Its deep and intimate inquiry is the mystery of personality. In other words, spiritual survival in a fateless universe. Quirky and powerful treatments of the Holocaust exist in recent literature and film, but Krall's joyous and wise protagonist gets under your skin in ways both subversive and uplifting. Thanks to Philip Boehm's glorious translation, I'm quoting, you now have in your hands a masterpiece. I don't see how I could add anything to that, so please welcome Philip Boehm.
Well, that's embarrassing. But thank you so much. It's very kind, and I'd like to thank the, what's the letters? The AATIA for welcoming me, a Houstonian, into your nest. I'm not really used to, can I turn this off? Can everyone hear me if I talk like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
How do I?
That I don't know, but here comes Stephen.
Oh, I hate it. Sorry.
I'm more used to this theatrical venues. I'm not an actor, but we have to occasionally speak out, and I'm used to telling actors to project more, so if I don't project enough, let me know.
Right.
I'd like to start by reading a bit of the Polish following Marion's example. And it's just a short paragraph or two. It's called, from the very first chapter of this book, which is indeed very fast-paced. And this is called Sznurowadła. Kupuję sznurowadła do męskich butów. Robiąc ten jakże banalny zakup, jeszcze wierzę, że kocha Jurkę Schwarzwalda. Wszyscy w to wierzą, a już najbardziej państwo Schwarzwaldowie. Jurek nie jest brzydki i nie jest nudny. Nie jest też biedny. Pożyczę od niego buty, ponieważ bomba zniszczyła dom na Ogrodowej i nie można się dostać do szafy ani do mieszkania. W pożyczonych butach wstępuję do Basi Maliniak, swojej przyjaciółki. Na chwilę wstępuję, żeby te nowe sznurowadła nadlec. That's just to give a sense of the language. Now I'll read the same passage in Polish, and then I'm going to take a few of these this is a book consisting of very short scenes, and they bounce around in time. Chronologically, we trace this woman, and this is non-fiction. Hanna Krall is a journalist, and she writes reportage. We trace the movements of the protagonist, Isolda, as she attempts to save her husband. But the very first scene, we're going to meet him, and then later he gets sent to a camp. She's desperate and the book is really a love story and about her attempts to recover her husband, to rescue him, and to also recover their love. Shoelaces. She buys shoelaces for a pair of men's shoes. Such a trivial purchase. As she's buying them, she still thinks she's in love with Jurek Schwarzwald. Everybody thinks that, especially Jurek's parents. Jurek isn't ugly, and he isn't boring. He isn't poor either. Isolda is wearing his shoes because a bomb destroyed the house on Ogrodova Street. And now she can't get into her apartment, let alone her wardrobe. She stops at her friend Basia Maliniak's, just for a moment, to thread the new laces. A young man is standing by the stove, warming his hands on the tiles. He's tall and slender, with straight golden hair. His hands have a golden tinge. When he sits down, he spreads his legs and drops his arms, nonchalantly, almost absent-mindedly. His hands just hang there, helpless, and even more beautiful. She learns he has two first names, Yeshayahu Wolf, and that Basia calls him Shayak. She takes her time lacing her shoes. After an hour, Shayak says, "You have the eyes of a rabbi's daughter." An hour later, he adds, "A skeptical rabbi." Basia sees her to the door and hisses, "I could kill you right now." Now I'm going to jump. And by this time, Shayak has been rounded up, caught in one of the roundups in Warsaw and sent off to a camp. And she visits a friend who reads cards, King of Hearts. The train from Krakow arrives at dawn. Isolda runs straight from the station to Lilusia Schubert's sister, Terenia, and immediately starts to explain everything. Cordon, gag, prison, Kruger, Kangur. But she doesn't have to. Terenia reaches for a pack of cards. "Shuffle them," she says, "and cut them with your right hand toward yourself." Then she lays out the cards and sees everything. A man with the blonde hair, in love. In other words, the King of Hearts. See, he's already out the door and on the move. Terenia studies the picture cards and suddenly her voice becomes gleeful. Your king has a trip ahead of him. What are you worried about? She's right, too. There he is, second row, first card on the right, the King of Hearts. Next to him is the Six of Hearts, which means a trip. Of course, those 3 spades are a bad sign, Terenia explains, but even that's not so tragic. You should be getting news any day now. She does get news, but it's from Auschwitz. Though at least there's an address where she can send packages. On the official postcard, her husband writes, I'm healthy, send something to eat. She sends bread, smoked bacon, onions, 1 kilogram of sugar, and 1 of lard. That costs 120 zlotys. She's allowed to send 1 package per month. Even if I have to die doing it, she tells Lilusha, even if I have to sell myself, I'm going to get that 120 zlotys every month. Time goes on. She does not receive a postcard one time. Something is returned to her with a no forwarding address, and she has to find out later where he gets sent. This is just after she's received that other non-return address. This chapter is called Ice Cream. Isolde has plenty of free time. She doesn't send packages. She doesn't try to get money. She doesn't buy sugar, onions, bacon, or bread. She doesn't have to get out of bed and get dressed. She doesn't even have to wake up. At times, mostly just before daybreak, she's convinced that Neue Adresse abwarten is a hoax. That means you have to wait for a new address. They say to wait, but there won't be any new address. He's dead. Either they've killed him or he's died of hunger, typhus, tuberculosis, exhaustion. She repeats the word dead, spelling it out, D-E-A-D. Then she adds her husband, M-Y-H-U-S-B-A-N-D-I-S-D-E-A-D. Mrs. Kruszewicz begs her to get out of bed. What for, she asks. Mrs. Kruszewicz reminds her that she was supposed to take her husband's suit to the dry cleaners. What for, she asks. All right, then just go out for a walk. She doesn't want to upset Mrs. Kruszewicz, so she goes out for a walk. She passes an ice cream shop. The doors are open and a young couple is walking out, each holding a flat wafer with ice cream on top. She imagines there's she and her husband walking down the street eating ice cream, but in cones like her husband preferred. There are different ways to eat ice cream from a cone. You can lick around the edges. You can put the whole thing in your mouth. You can bite off tiny pieces, starting at the top. You can go slow or fast, and if you slow down, the ice cream melts and runs down in a sticky streak between your fingers. How did her husband eat his ice cream? Did he lick around the edges? Did he start at the top? Slow or fast? She doesn't remember. She goes back to the shop and buys 1 scoop and tries out different ways. It's horrible. She can't remember how her husband ate ice cream. She gives up on her walk. She boards a tram, and there's another couple sitting right across from her. They don't look at each other, don't talk. The man rests his hand on the woman's lap. The woman adjusts her coat and removes his hand. He puts it back without looking. Isolde feels a strange sensation. Not her, but her knee. Her knee is yearning for a hand. Not Isolde, only her knee. Her knee has become a separate, living, yearning creature. She looks at the man's hand, but that's not the hand her knee is after. She sighs with relief. She doesn't remember how he ate his ice cream, but her knee remembers his hand. just going to read one more passage. And in the book, as I said before, it jumps in time. And some of these jumps flash far forward when it's long after the war and she's settled in Israel after the 68 crisis in Poland. And she's has these armchair reflections. And this passage is one of those. Armchair, foreign language is the title. She will try, in spite of everything, to tell her story about the Demon escape freight car and to explain how happy she was at that moment and how happiness can suddenly overcome a person in absurd situations. Her daughter will translate into Hebrew. Her granddaughter will nod understandingly. Happiness can surprise you, that's true. And what happened next? Next came a train station and the train stopped. A conductor came in, astonished at what he saw. Was machen Sie hier? He shouted. She answered very calmly. Nothing really. I'm headed to Cottbus. In dangerous situations, she lectures her granddaughter, it's always good to, how can I explain it? It's good to maintain a certain air of superiority. Cottbus, the conductor was even more amazed. We're headed in the opposite direction. To which she replied, still calmly, really? In that case, I must have got on the wrong train. Her granddaughter will worry. The conductor could have called the gendarmes or even the SS. No, he didn't call anyone. He was a harmless man in late middle age, and she always had a way with older men. Her daughter and granddaughter will smile, and for a moment they'll talk about her good looks. Her daughter will say that she was beautiful just like Elizabeth Taylor, and her granddaughter will state that she's still very beautiful, and then what? She jumped out of the car and changed trains. She made her way to Cottbus. She found the clerk with the notebook and apologized for running away. She had run away from she was on a forced farm. What's the Hebrew word for war? She asked all of a sudden. Milchama, clerk, paki, notebook, machberet. Such bizarre words. How could anyone learn such a language? They're extraordinary words, her daughter will say. Listen, machberet. You think desert and sand and cliffs, and it's nothing more than a notebook. The clerk asked where she was coming from. Isolde told her she'd been on one of the transports out of Warsaw after the uprising. They were headed in this direction, but she wasn't sure where to and feared it might be to a camp, so she broke away. Her daughter will interrupt, telling her to explain about the Warsaw uprising. Of course, her granddaughter had learned about it in school, but it's easy to get all the uprisings mixed up. Unfortunately, the nice clerk was only in charge of the farm workers, but Isolde had been assigned to the canvas mill, and someone else was in charge of the factories, and that person was eating supper. Why so many details? Her daughter will grow impatient. What difference does it make which clerk and what they ate? It makes all the difference in the world. The nice clerk remembered that my name was Pawlicka. Don't you understand? Maria Pawlicka and not Regensberg. She remembered, but she couldn't help me, and the person who could help me was eating supper. She'd finished work and had gone home. What are you arguing about? Her granddaughter will ask. Her daughter will explain the difference between the clerks, and her granddaughter will start to look at her watch. They sent me to their superior. Wir beide sollen das Gesetz achten, habe ich nicht recht? He said. Which means, we both ought to respect the law, isn't that right? And the law, my dear, stipulates that people who desert their place of work are sent to the penal camp. Thank you.